I'm Shivani Gupta, and welcome to the Ask Shivani podcast. I believe that one of the best presents that you can give yourself is time to be able to sit down and ask yourself some questions. I believe that the quality of the questions that you ask yourself will determine the quality of your life. Welcome to the Ask Shivani podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you about something that seems to have taken on the trend a little bit, but in fact, it's been around for a very long time. And I've got so excited about it that I am in the process of getting accredited in this particular space. And today we're going to speak about something so simple yet so profound, and that is breathwork. So let's talk a little bit about what breathwork is. And, let's start off with the basics and then kind of layer that. So let's start off with the foundations as we do in a house and then build the different stories up, so to speak. So what is really breathwork? The first thing about breathwork to know is it's literally how to bring oxygen or oxygenate your body so that you can actually thrive and be able to cope with a lot of different things. And when you're really physically or when you're emotionally stressed, one of the things that happens is it affects our breath. So when you get really stressed, one of the things that happens is that our breathing gets very shallow and we tend to breathe in the upper part of our body and we forget to take that breath really deeply into our abdomen to allow that to release it. And there's a lot of different techniques, and I'm going to share a couple of them with you, and to really demystify this whole thing, because yes, there's some amazing people and yes, there's a lot of science behind it, but I'm a big one that as long as it's evidence-based data that we're doing something and people have done a lot of research on it, well then let's just distill it and get the top 2 or 3 tips in it and be able to apply that into our lives in 30 seconds or a couple of minutes a day, because there's a whole heap of other things that you want to be able to do as well. So let's talk about this notion that there's, breathwork is not new. So a lot of people are like, there's this breathwork workshop that we did, or I've got this breathwork coach, etc. But it's not new. In fact, it's been, when you take it to its roots, it's been going around for thousands of years. And I guess yoga, which has been again around for thousands of years, was probably the first place where it started, particularly nostril breathing, which I'll speak to you about, but also being able to take deep breaths in and out through certain postures, and being able to hold certain postures as well. And the basic idea of it then, when you look at the research behind the yoga, was really to help release toxins and stress, and that when that happened, you would automatically then start to nourish your mind and your body as well. There's a lot of research that now also talks about some of the benefits of breathwork. So for example, it can have a really positive impact on your central nervous system. If you feel stressed, again, as your breath gets really fast and shallow, having some really simple techniques where you can then oxygenate it and put oxygen into your bloodstream. And then one of the things that happens is when your brain tells your body that there is a threat, your body responds in either fight or flight or freeze, as we now speak about those 3 Fs. But one of the things is when you slow your breath down and you purposefully start to breathe more deeply, what you're doing is sending signals into your brain that everything is okay and everything will be fine. And then this fight or flight or freeze response that we might normally have starts to decrease. And what you can do is then your body starts to function again. And these are really important things. And sometimes, we're just crossing the road and it looks like a car's not going to stop, right? And it feels like it's going to hit us. Well, our stress response is going to be very high there. And we probably in that stage want to flight, right? We want to kind of make a run for it so we don't get hit by the car. There may be times that you're having a conversation in a family and that conversation gets a bit heated because people have got different viewpoints. And so you might then want to continue to fight that argument and do that, and you might want to fight. Now, I'm not suggesting you still wouldn't run away and you would just stay in the road breathing, or you wouldn't have your viewpoint come out in terms of your family and not give your viewpoint, but it's what happens to our breath. And it's the amount of stress that we're feeling as we are doing that. So one of the things that we want to do is to be able to decrease that whenever we can remember to do it, and to be able to make that happen. So I just want to share with you 2 or 3 different techniques. And these techniques I use and I find them really useful. You may have others. You might also want to Google it and have a look. You may have a breathwork teacher around, and shortly as I get accredited, I'll be able to share some more things with you around this notion of breathwork and just the impact that it also has on your wellness, particularly your mental wellness for me. So let's talk about, the first thing is really deep abdominal breathing. So most of us breathe in the upper half of our body, and we again don't go into deep abdominal breathing. How do we know that we are breathing deeply? Well, if you put your hands on your belly and you take a breath in and took a really deep breath in through your nose, is your belly expanded? If your belly hasn't moved, that means that the breath is not going all the way down into your abdominals. And what you want to do, the best way to do that is to do that. Now, hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast while you're driving or doing something that's pretty active, then please don't put your hands on your belly. This one might be a better one to try when you've got some safe space and you're sitting down or you're standing up and you're checking these breathwork techniques out. So the abdominal breathing is simply putting your hands on your abdomen and taking that deep breath. So I just want you to try that for a couple of times. And I'm also going to take you through, I guess, a rhythm and a count, and that helps us to stay on track. And there's lots of different rhythms. If you're really stressed out, the amount of oxygen that you breathe in may be to the count of 4, but you might then want to breathe out carbon dioxide to the count of 8. That means you're getting rid of more stuff. You've got more breaths going out with stuff that's stored in your body than breathing in. If you want to just have balanced breathing, you might do 4 in, hold for 4, and 4 out. So let's do where we breathe in for 4. We're going to hold for 4, but then we're going to exhale for the count of 8. And I'll do that with you. And if you are sitting there listening to it, you might want to do your own rhythm to it, but let me just share that with you. So let's do that together. Hands on your belly, and you go, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's do that again. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now let's do it quietly, but you'll hear me breathing through this bit. And so just that really simple technique, and again, you can do it for the count of 5 or 6, but again, if you want some even balanced breathing, you would do the same in, hold, and out. And if you're trying to get rid of a lot of stress and you're really feeling into that heightened state, one of the things you might do is breathe in, hold for the same amount, but maybe exhale for double that we just did. We just did a 4, 4, 8 count. Let's talk about another method, and this was something that came through one of my yoga teachers. And one of the things that it spoke about was this alternate nostril breathing. And it sounds really weird, particularly when you're listening to it. There's also a YouTube of that if you just go to the Ask Shivani YouTube to be able to watch me do that. But if you're just listening to it, one of the things that you need your thumb, you need your index finger, and you need your middle finger. So what you would do is you would take your thumb, will always block one of the nostrils, you leave the other one open, and you put both your index and your middle finger on top of your forehead. So it'll feel like this weird T, but what you're doing is you're going to only breathe in through, because your right nostril is now closed, you're going to breathe in from your left nostril. Then you're going to hold your breath, and then you're going to take the thumb off the nostril and cover it with your ring finger, your left nostril. And now you're going to breathe out through your right nostril. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in again, block both sides, hold, and then breathe out through the left nostril. So what you're doing is you're taking a breath in and out of one nostril, switching while you hold, and then out and then in from that nostril. Hold, then out and in from the other nostril, and so on and so forth. That exercise to do for 30 to 60 seconds a day is amazing. Again, you can Google it, you can read about it, but it's called alternative nostril breathing. It comes from a yoga practice. But essentially, that breathing technique particularly helps you encouraging the balance in your mind and body. And the way that my yoga teacher spoke about it, it talks about balancing your left side of your brain and your right side of your brain. And so it brings a lot of calm, I find, to that. I have that as a daily practice for about 30 to 60 seconds, and I find that it really, really helps me do that. Now, there's a lot of other breath work. There's stuff that you can do breath work in ice baths. There's breath work you can do underwater. there's breathwork, there's so many different particular types of it. One experience that I wanted to share with you was I had the pleasure to be in a workshop with a gentleman called Nam Baldwin, and he works with a lot of athletes around the world, world-class athletes around the world, a lot of sports teams around the world, to really help them understand the power of breath. And in this particular workshop, it was actually done in a pool. You never do this exercise by yourself, but we had to hold our breath and see how far we could hold our breath. But also, more importantly than, you know, winning a gold medal for how long you actually kept your breath on hold, it was more about understanding your body and understanding your stress responses. And one of the things that I recognized within myself was, I'm mentally very strong, and I'm like, yep, I'm good. I can hold this as long as I can, and really competitive with myself around that. But one of the things I learned on Nam's workshop was the fact that my stress responses physically are a lot quicker than where I am mentally. And so one of the things, what that means is I started to think a little bit about, if one of my children does something, that I will want to react, and that reaction is a stress response. So what I learned about myself through that breathwork technique under the water was, actually, what I think is my limit's actually a little bit shorter than that. My fuse is a little bit shorter than that. So when I think I'm going into stress response, rather than wait till I've reached it, start to recognize that a little bit earlier, and then take some deeper breaths around that. And the last technique that I wanted to share with you was, again, that came from another teacher of mine, where you are trying to oxygenate your body really quickly. This comes in really handy as long as you're not doing it in front of a bunch of people, unless you want to do it together with your team, whether it's a live meeting face-to-face or on Zoom or whatever platform you're using. But you basically put your hands into a fist, and you raise your hands as long as you've got no blood pressure issues in the throat. You would put your hands up above you, and then you're trying to take a deep breath in. So you're going, don't get too hung up whether you're holding your breath in on the way in or out, as long as you're doing the opposite. And you would do that about 30 times. So let's do that together. And if you're watching it or listening to it, hands in a fist, both arms up straight, and then you're bringing them down to your shoulder and breathing in. You can make as much noise, and you would do that again to rapidly oxygenate your brain. Comes in really handy in building that into your practice. So if you're interested in breath work, please Google it. Please try one of those 3 things. If you've got any questions, my website and the podcast is called Ask Shivani for that particular reason. And just to cover that from a safety perspective, if any of you feel like you're hyperventilating, or something happens with your heartbeat, or you have a muscle spasm, or you feel a bit dizzy, please stop. Make sure that you get some support around that, and do things that are really important for you. As we know, there's a lot of issues around the world when our breath doesn't work. Obviously, with one breath, we come into the world, and with one last breath, we go out of this world. So it's really important to just make sure that we continue to connect to our breath, because it is one of the most important things. I hope today helped you, and I look forward to catching you on the podcast, and always would love it if you would rate or review this podcast. Thank you. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Ask Shivani podcast, where I got to ask some questions. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow Ask Shivani on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you haven't done so, please go to the Apple podcast and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It would mean a lot. Thank you.